Well, when that call came through, almost lost my mind. Yes, when that call came through, almost lost my mind. Because I strictly understood
that you had crossed that line. Roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones.
I guess there's nothing in this world that can make you stay. Nothing in this world that can make you stay. Oh Lord, I got a word in mind.
No matter anyway, roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones.
Well, goodbye, brother. Sad to let you down. Yes, goodbye, brother. Sad to let you down. Oh, well, I'll never see your face
until the next go round. Roll them bones.
This is the last show before Sweetie and I head back to California. Tom, Louie, and myself had a ball doing this, and they're huge talents, both of them, and I feel honored to have worked with them. I'll miss all the friends I've made in North Carolina, and I'm going to particularly miss the cocktail neighbors. But what I'll miss most is the natural beauty here. Friends from California call, "What do you do there? What's the excitement?" I say, it's not about doing, it's about experiencing, especially the weather. This usually garners silence from the other end. I tell them how during the recent hurricane, when the big winds came, I rode my kayak out in the middle of our pond just to feel the power. It was awesome. The trees were dancing madly and the clouds were racing low across the sky, and the passing geese kept getting blown out of formation. They were all confused. And then I closed my eyes and just listened to the howling wind, and I could hear the next gust coming before it would hit me, which was scary and a real trip. I'm talking 60, 70-mile-an-hour winds. At some point, I put my hand in the water, and it was warm, the last warmth of summer, and a feeling of well-being came over me, like a soft embrace. Then I think about other glorious days, the wind blowing the clouds across the sky, and the shadows making patterns on my neighbor's field. The ever-changing sky, the myriad shades of green, the softness of the spring rain. Then there was the ice storm. I'll never forget how the woods were a crystal cathedral. The ice tinkled like bells. I've loved it here. I've loved every day here. And when I'm gone, I'll miss this Eden. I think of Tom Maxwell's song, Samsara. As soon as we attain what we want something new. But thank you for everything beautiful. I love you so, I love you so, I love you so. Thank you, North Carolina.
All the birds have started cooing. All the birds have started cooing.
In less than 20 minutes, we were at the Anson County Hospital, and I could tell as I rounded the corner to the family waiting room that things were not good. Papa had died before any of us could say goodbye. A quick, sudden heart attack brought about by complications from his antipsychotic medications and a lifetime of molasses, barbecue, bourbon, and homemade biscuits. He had suffered the attack while watching Gilligan's Island on TV, and I'm certain the captain, Gilligan, Mary Ann, and Ginger all had Papa in their prayers back on that deserted island after witnessing the tragic event. Mama sat slumped in the corner, shock on her face, her head resting on my brother's shoulder. Aunt Ada Gaddy, whose middle name was actually Halloween and had suffered from polio as a child, and was now a humpbacked widow hairdresser. She clutched my hand and gave me a kiss on the forehead. "He's gone, baby. He's gone. Your sweet daddy's gone," she moaned. "I knew it was coming," she continued. "I can smell death on people," she stated. "I smelled it on your daddy last week when I was cutting his hair. I smelled it on Grace Faulkner a few weeks ago, and next thing you know, she's dead as a doornail from a bad case of lockjaw. It's a curse having the vision, and nothing you can do about it, darling. It's a curse." "What does it smell like?" I asked. "It smells a little sweet, a little sour at the same time, baby. Hard for me to describe, but I sure know it when I smell it." The next morning, things were very quiet in our home. Mama sat in the living room in a black pantsuit, smoking a cigarette, staring out the window. "Mama, we need to go to the funeral home and make the arrangements," my sister Lynn said. She just shook her head while staring out the window and waved her hand in the air at us. "You can do it, darling. Take Louie with you." Moore's Funeral Home was one of the oldest in town and was located in an old stone house just around the corner from the Ansonia Theater where Love's Story was being shown. Lynn and I walked from casket to casket in the frigid showroom. We finally chose a lovely bronze-colored casket with ivory upholstery that was both elegant and understated, just like Papa would have liked it. "Excellent choice there," Mrs. Moore gushed. "That model is waterproof seal guaranteed for 75 years, she stated for authority. "But now you need a vault," she instructed, and let us pass several huge examples. "This one is lined in mirrored stainless steel with an iridescent metal coating that is guaranteed watertight for 75 years, she beamed. "Well, you just said the coffin was guaranteed watertight for 75 years. How many years does a coffin have to be watertight anyway?" I asked. "Daddy always said bury him with a peach pit in his hand. And how's that going to sprout if he's all locked up in a bunch of boxes?" I continued without even blinking. Mrs. Moore laughed a nervous laugh, and my sister pointed to the basic vault model and said, "We'll take this one." The funeral was held in the main sanctuary of the First Baptist Church, and everyone in town came to show their respect. I never had been around a dead person before, but I have to admit, he looked as handsome as I'd ever seen. Not a hair out of place, thanks to Aunt Ada, who also moonlighted as the funeral home cosmetologist. The service was brief, a few kind words, instrumentals, and then we proceeded on our way to the graveside service in Norwood, 15 miles away. Cars from other lanes pulled to the sides of the road in respect, and we snaked our way through the countryside, snow clouds tracking our progress mile by mile. Norwood Cemetery is a forlorn and remote place, right across the street from Shantytown with its cheap frame houses, broken-out screen doors, and rusty Cadillacs up on blocks. Ancient oaks crowd leaning obelisks, and tombs weathered from hundreds of showers and snows. All the Thompsons were there, from my mother's parents to their parents and their parents, uncles and aunts, cousins and kin, babies with names like Moonine and Esteline. Here lay the grave of Vera Pines, my aunt who had died from scarlet fever at age 10. Here lay Jones Thompson, who had been struck by lightning at his own wife's funeral in 1800. All these relatives listened to the edges of the newly opened hole, waiting to greet my father in his new resting place. The flowers were in abundance, and 2 vans had been necessary to transport them all. A huge wreath of white roses from Uncle Clyde Cecil Dixon and Aunt Pauline. Another wreath shaped like a huge telephone made of yellow mums, the receiver off the hook, and a white ribbon with gold lettering that simply stated, "Jesus called." Baskets of carnations, towers of lilies, turned this barren wintry patch of Stanley County clay into an exotic tropical garden, if only for a moment. "Lord, we give back to you Frank Washington Lewis, and pray that you will take him in your warm, loving arms and welcome him into the congregation of your blessed worshipers who are lucky enough to have the opportunity to sing your praises for all eternity," Reverend Hungsinger prayed aloud. The casket slowly descended on its motorized trolley, and Mama threw a kiss and a white rose into the grave, and she turned to walk away, leaving my father free to shake the hand of eternity.
For the serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
In the afterlife, you could be headed for a serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
So the bus pulled into the outdoor performance shed in the panhandle of Florida after having traversed a ruddy gravel road populated with single wides and screaming parents. Chicken fence. Spooked me to death. It was the Horde Tour in the summer of 1997. One of the guys in the band who shall remain nameless had become very friendly with another band that was on the tour that shall also remain nameless. And this band were full on all the time. They were kind of a hippie jam band type deal, except they were extremely aggressive. And you'd go to their bus, or you'd walk by their bus, and you'd see outside the bus their wives getting into fights with their girlfriends. I mean, it was full on all the time. It was exhausting. But anyway, this fella in our band really thought that this was fun. And so, he dropped with them. And they were having a good time, and their eyes were dilated, and it came time in the evening for Neil Young's set, and it was great watching Neil play. Ben Folds would close the second stage, and Neil would find the chord that they closed on and then get feedback in the same chord and then start a set. He was great. He was a great player. He had brought his wife and he had brought his son. Ben, who's confined to a wheelchair. I liked them all very much. They were very nice to me. Ben was a big fan of the Zippers, so I thought that was really neat, So I signed some stuff for him. Well, so here is the guy in our band and the guys in this other band, all of whom are peaking by this point, and they're setting up the stage for Neil Young's performance. And they're way at the top of the amphitheater, so the stage is pretty far away. They bring out the Hammond organ, which has like a cutout of like an angel on it, maybe like an angel face with wings or something like that, completely innocuous. Well, the guy in our band, who shall remain nameless, in his altered state, thought that they were wheeling Ben out onto the stage. This upset him terribly. He couldn't believe it. He was like, "What? Look at that! What are they doing? What? I can't believe it. Do you guys see that?" And the other guys are like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, I can't believe anyone would ever do that. That is so tasteless. What goes through a man's mind?" And he raced down the steps to put a stop to this. Well, this was so inappropriate and apoplectic that the other guys just melted away into the night. And when my bandmate got down and saw what was really going on, he came back up sheepishly and found that none of his friends were there anymore. Later that night, he appropriated a golf cart and was chased around by security. But what I want to know is, what goes through a man's mind? What goes through a man's mind when our drummer insists on playing the entirety of an outdoor summertime radio festival in a gorilla suit? He almost passed out. What goes through a man's mind? When I drank my brains out in New York and climbed on the back of a Krispy Kreme truck with Darren Jesse holding a fucking baritone saxophone case. The guy took off like a bat out of hell. What goes through a man's mind? I have a friend, Scott Caro, who's been playing in bands a long time. He's a great drummer, probably the best storyteller I've ever met. This is a story that he told. He went to see Kiss in high school. Now, I don't want to age the dude, but this was in the 70s. And he went with a friend of his. Well, there's a couple of dudes near there. One guy's sitting on the other guy's shoulder. And the guy on top's got a full beard and long hair. It was the 70s. And he's wanting to blow fire out of his mouth like Gene Simmons. And they're fucked up. I mean, they're drunk out of their minds. So he blows fire out of his mouth, sets himself on fire. His beard's in flames. His hair's in flames. Everybody around him just goes whoop. And the guy holding him up doesn't know what's going on. He's still rocking the Kiss. Meanwhile, the dude's on fire. Ace Frehley looks at him, and he sees that the dude is on fire, and he goes, Anyway, the dude finally drops off and they go back, you know, and so here's Scott Carl with his friend, and his friend says, man, I think a dude just died. Do you want to leave? And they had to think about it. Should we leave the Kiss concert? They didn't stop playing. They choose to stay. Pretty soon the other dudes come back. Guy's bald. Climbs back up on the dude's shoulder and rocks the rest of the night away. What goes through a man's mind?
You better give it up, so where it's at. You know your papa likes it tight like that. I got the job to do, call it the Uptown Star. Everybody with sense is home in bed, but that's the time I'm cracking head. You better watch your step, doing the Uptown Star.
Some people want to keep it all on the level.
Think they're being chased by the devil. That don't matter to me.
Some people don't love the lies no more.
They're sleeping on the killing floor. I tell you how I'm gonna be. While you wait in line for your starry crown, I'm going to throw my burden down. Let me testify, doing it, yeah! Come on! In line for your starry crown, I'm going to throw my burden down. Let me testify, yeah!
Late autumn, 2001. I couldn't change what had been done to my country. I couldn't stop hatred and madness. I could only try to change my own heart. Adjacent to the pond at the edge of our property is the Neuse River. Most afternoons that fall, I found myself out on my kayak. On the water, I listened to audiobooks, Shakespeare, Proust, the King James Bible. I scribbled in notebooks and I took pictures. I was in quest of nourishment, trying to rekindle some fire, trying to get back in touch with some higher part of myself. For a brief moment, in the midst of tragedy, poetry mattered. Many artists say, and for me it is true, art is a religion. I turn to my religion now. This afternoon out in the river, I rode close to a great blue heron. The ungainly bird seemed like a remnant of the dinosaur age, primeval. Before I could get close enough for a picture, it took off like an umbrella unfolding. I marveled that the gnarled stumps crashed along the bank from storms past. Leaves floated down from the trees, red, brown, and orange. All was reduced to the basic elements, the light, the smell of burning leaves, and the silence of the sky. A silence suddenly pierced by migrating blackbirds swarming back and forth between trees on one side of the bank and then the other. I saw black against orange, then orange against black. It was a vision so sublime, I wondered if such glory is what I might see in my mind's eye at the last hour. Having the camera makes me more observant, makes me focus. I no longer seek out the picturesque, the postcard. I'm trying to develop a subtler vision. I'm trying to see deeper. I'm learning to take notice of abstracts, patterns, and interesting shapes. Mostly, I look for a particular light, a light that seems to separate the sacred from the mundane. Call it God's light, if you will. I found this light illuminating a leafless sycamore tree. The tree had no inherent symbolism, no mythology, and no larger meaning, but the fact that it filled me with awe, with emotion, with humility. Wasn't that holy enough? Next, on the river, I concentrated on the shimmering reflection of elm trees on the water, golden leaves lit translucent from behind. I was mesmerized by the fluid dance that changed with the ripples. For the last few nights, when I closed my eyes to sleep, it was orange and yellow and brown that I saw, the color of the leaves, and the porcelain blue sky that grows darker at the edge of the picture. I saw the swirling leaves from the poplars and the oaks. I can still feel the leaves underfoot as I embark at the boat ramp. I note a mass of black leaves in the water clumped around a fallen poplar. I stop for a picture. The lighting and composition are perfect. The image is stark, minimal, a sonata of senescence. The question is, should I include the beer can? Yes, absolutely. That's just God's humor. According to Thomas Merton, you don't find God, you create the conditions for God to find you. Or, to put it in musical terms, the task of the composer is to compose himself. Sunday afternoon, cold, sunny, and my first day back on the river in weeks. The colors of autumn are gone, and the grays and browns of winter have taken their place. The blessing of winter is that you can see more, especially the birds. I noticed 2 hawks perched in the trees. Then I saw another, 3 hawks. I kept looking and saw another, and then another, 5 hawks. I counted them again, and I found one more. All total were 6 hawks, looking like noble centurions perched high above the ground. I didn't see another hawk for the rest of the day. The cranes didn't even stir when I passed them. They seemed used to me. One came in from out of nowhere and flew across the woods, making a loud screech. The reflection of the clouds upon the water was particularly intense, particularly vivid. 4:15. Looking for my one picture, the perfect light, the moment, and I found it. An orange bush reflected golden on the water. The only shrub with coloration, iridescent like a burning bush. But it didn't speak, or if it did, I didn't hear it. On the bridge, my turnaround point, I noticed dancing white squares, some overlapping at different angles. The smaller rectangle shapes within the larger squares appeared to float forward to create the illusion of a layer of space between the horizontal and vertical planes, like a Casimir Maevich Suprematus composition. Rowing home in the other direction, the reflections were sharply drawn, black and white, with muted color, a fine mirror. I kept my eye on the water and navigated between the images of the trees. Reality flipped. The reflection became real. The sensation was as if I were floating above the trees through the clouds. I went on like this, rowing through the clouds, and I was overcome with undiluted joy, almost enough to bring tears to my eyes. The sun faded and was soon below the tree line. I was alone on the river. It was perfectly tranquil. Geese passed over, and another crane swooped down, and I tried to take it all in. I placed my hands together, closed my eyes, trying to absorb the moment, the sensation, the deep peace. I wanted to cherish it, to etch it into memory. I thought how my life had become a series of magical moments, not events, not stories, just snatches of perfect light. When I rode past the spot where our pond is exposed to view, I peered through the barren trees and thought I could make out our house. I could not see anything specific, only a slight smudge of color. But I knew it was there, and it struck me there was meaning in this. Perhaps a metaphor for faith in things unseen. Walking home, I paused at our pond. It was frozen, and geese were sliding on the ice, stood for a long time in the enveloping darkness. "Good night, T.S. Eliot," I said, and repeated the hopeful last lines of The Wasteland. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Baby.
Trapped at birth, determine what it's worth. We work the most to gain the things we can the least attain. And it's a sad, sad song. We all must sing along. If our fondest wish comes true, we only wish for something new. But thank you for everything beautiful, for everything, thank you. I love you so, I love you so, I love you so, I love you so. Samsara every day to say you're born that way allows you not to see the higher possibility.
So when you come over on the edges, you're not going to be on television.